We're talking today with Richard Swanson of Kentwood, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Swanson, can you start by giving us some background on yourself?
I was born in Lucas County, Iowa, January 1st, 1930, on a farm just outside of Sheridan, which is about 55 miles south and east of Des Moines. I was raised on a farm till I was 10 years old. We moved to town. My dad was a preacher. We moved to town in 1940. I graduated from high school in 1948, and I went to Korea in 1951.
All right. Now, did you remember much about the events of World War II and those things as they were going on?
When World War II started, I was just about 12 years old. Now, we had a 13-tube Motorola radio, which was shortwave, and I could sit and listen to Hitler speak.
Mm-hmm.
I could sit and listen to Mussolini, Churchill, Tokyo Rose, and all them people in my bedroom, which I did quite often. And so it was quite fascinating. I mean, I was born in 30, so when I was 12 years old in 1942, the war started. I was January 1st of 1942. The war started in December 7th of 19, so I was pretty near 12 years old. So by the time it was over, I was in my early teens. And during that period, I spent a lot of time listening to what was going on. We had two friends. We had a neighbor that had two brothers that were killed, one in Luxembourg on the ground. He was an infantry. One was in the Air Force. He was killed in Luxembourg just 30 days later. Both brothers killed in the same area, in the same country, and at 30 days apart.
Now, when the war came to an end, were you relieved that it was over before you got into it, or did you not really think about that?
I hadn't really thought about that too much because when it ended, I was still just a mid-teen, so I didn't think I worried about that too much. The main thing I was worrying about that time was gas rationing and the sugar rationing and all that other kind of stuff, though we didn't suffer from it too much, but a lot of people did.
All right. Now, when that came to an end, you graduated from high school. What did you do after you finished high school?
Not a heck of a lot. I worked as a cab driver for a few years till my money dropped out of that business and I had to go to work. And then I worked for a Maytag company for a year till I was told that job had killed somebody within 3 months, and I decided I better get out of there. So then I went to work for Economy Farms Corporation, and I worked there for 10 years. That was after I came back from Korea, though.
Right. But I was kind of asking mostly about what you did between the time you finished high school and the time you were drafted.
Well, I worked for the construction company in Des Moines and drove back and forth up there for 1 year. I worked for Maytag Company in Newton for a year, and I drove a cab for a while. And then I just got a job as being with a dairy company. Just went to work, in fact, I'd only been working there for maybe 2 months, 3 months, and I got my draft notice. But in the meantime, I had just got married, and the draft notice came a couple of days later. And so my boss kind of lied to the draft board and told them that he couldn't train nobody in 30 days, so he got me a 30-day deferment. So it was 60 days later before I went to the Army.
Right.
And when I got down to Camp Chaffee, Arkansas, I had a Japanese first sergeant, which seemed kind of strange because we'd just been at war with them. And but he was a good guy. He was all right. He treated everybody fair and square.
Was he a veteran himself? Had he served in World War II, or was he younger?
He was younger, I think. I'm pretty sure he was older than I was, but he was probably mid-20s, upper 20s.
Right. Okay. Can you describe a little bit the basic training process? What was that like?
Quick, fast. We went out on what they call, we was there just a matter of 6 weeks, something like that. And we went out on what they call bivouac. Now remember, I was in Arkansas, which is quite a way south, and it was the last of October, 1st of November. And we was out in a bivouac in a tent, and I woke up in the morning with a snowdrift on top of me, which nobody's expecting in Arkansas. But anyhow, that was another story. Everybody got surprised by that one. But I took just a normal, quick run of basic training, and then I came home for a few days of furlough type thing.
Yeah.
And It wasn't a full 30 days. It was 15, 20 days or something. And I shipped out to, I got on a Rock Island Depot train, or Rock Island Depot went on a train to Minneapolis, and from Minneapolis we got on the Northern Pacific and went to Seattle, where we shipped out for Japan.
Now, at this point, you were not assigned to a unit. You were just going there as a replacement,
I was
basically.
just a draftee, not knowing where I was going. We lit in Yokohama.
Describe the trip across. What kind of ship were you in?
I was on it. What I remember, this was in 1951.
Mm-hmm.
Well, early 52 probably. No, late 51. I was on what we had then in the United States, the second largest transport ship, and it was jam-packed full of draftees and people going to the war. But I was one of the lucky dudes, and I do mean lucky. I had KP duty, and most people frown on that and say, man, that ain't lucky, but from what I had, it was. My job was 2 meals. I would stand in line and serve. Then I'd be done for 2 or 3 meals. And then I'd stand in line and serve for 2 meals. And because I did that, I had to run the ship. If a storm was out there, it was hailing or sleeting or raining or whatever, I could go up on the cafeteria room up there and out of the weather, out of the wind, out of the cold, and play cards or whatever I wanted to do. But you guys that didn't have that kind of duty, they had 2 choices. Sit out on the deck and take the weather, or sit on their bunk down inside. That was their 2 choices. And I had to run the upper deck where I was in out of the cold and out of the wind, and then had to sit down on that stinky deck. Because we had, and that deck, down there where the people were, we were staying and sleeping, you had people, guys on there that were sick and throwing up from 10 minutes after they got on that ship till we lit in Yokohama. So they were making a lot of the rest of us feeling kind of woozy, even though the ocean wasn't bothering us, but they were.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some of them I was feeling sorry for because they had been, 13 days we went across there. And they were in pretty sad shape till we got in Yokohama. But we got in Yokohama, and all these thousands of people lined up there, and they were saying, you're going to the 25th, or you 10, you're going to the 2nd, and so forth. And I kept standing there. I couldn't figure out what was going on, and just a few of us. We stood there the whole day off and on when they'd call out numbers. And they'd call 100 guys for this, and 50 guys for that, and 40 guys for this, and we just stood there. Went to bed that night and got out there the next day, and they called off our names and said, you and you and you, and about 20 of us or 30 of us, they said, you're going over to Osaka, Japan, take CBR warfare training. Thank you very much. I didn't need that, but anyhow, that's chemical, biological, and radioactive warfare.
Okay.
Which we're talking 1951 now, or 52, and so that had just got heard of too much. The only thing they had before in the world and earlier was mustard gas and that type of stuff. But anyhow, when we got through with that training, supposedly training, it was only a week or 2. But then they said, okay, now you're going to this unit and you're going to that. So they sent one guy for each unit, and I wound up in the 176 Charlie Battery of the Armored Field Artillery Unit, and I was responsible for any if we was attacked with chemical, biological, and radioactive warfare.
All right. Well, what kind of training did you actually get for that? What did they teach
Not
you?
much. Not much. Just what it was, basically, and how to put on a mask, and, well, a few of the basics. I'll put it this way. I was tickled pink that we didn't get attacked because I don't know what I'd have done if we had.
Right.
Because I was responsible for, in my Charlie battery, there was 120 men to each battery, and so I would have been responsible for 120 guys' life if we'd got it, and it would have been kind of touch and go there, I think. Because our training didn't amount, we did it in a matter of days, so I mean, you can imagine it wasn't like you went into war for 6 months and got trained on this kind of stuff. We went in there for less than 6 days. That was probably 3 days.
Right, so you're really not trained to do anything about how to actually deal with those materials.
Well, they said we were.
Mm-hmm.
They said we were.
But you knew how to put on a gas mask.
Oh yeah, we knew how to put on the mask, and we knew how to do a lot of the other stuff. I mean, we knew how to fix a bunch of antidotes. I don't now, but we knew how to fix a bunch of antidotes on some of that stuff, and to take care of it when people got hit or a lot of that stuff we knew how to take care of things after the fact.
Right.
But as far as doing anything about anything when it was happening, well, he didn't know beans from apple butter.
Okay. So you're sent out to join this battalion. What kind of reception did you get when you got there?
Well, I walked into Charlie Battery, and I'm all by my lonesome. I was the only one who went to that one because that was the battery that was closest to the front. Well, I'll back up. In an artillery unit, you got service company, headquarters battery, and you got Able Battery, Baker Battery, Charlie Battery. And Charlie Battery is the closest one out in the front. And that's where I went. And behind it, or in front of us, was a 2nd Rock Infantry Division. Beside us, on over beside us, and going back, we was going this way, and going this way was a South Korean artillery unit, which, by the way, got to use all modernistic treatment, especially made in the United States. And they got everything handed to them on a platter. They had new stuff, just come out of the factory. We were using stuff that discontinued and thrown away in World War II. And we had to have 6 or 7 units sitting there to keep 4 or 5 running. But that was the way things were.
Now, your armored field artillery, did that mean you had self-propelled guns, or were these just towed weapons?
It depends on which way you're talking. The South Koreans had towed weapons, had towed by a deuce and a half. They were brand new, made. And they had deuce and a half trucks sitting back behind if they wanted to move them somewhere.
Right.
We had what they called a half track. It was a tank with no top,
Right.
with treads on it, and you run it up there and you fire away.
Well, a half-track has wheels in the front like a truck,
This was tracks.
but this was probably an old M7.
It was a half track as far as the artillery unit. It wasn't a half track
It was like a tank chassis.
like was used as a half track, but it was a half track as far as the tank and the artillery was concerned. But it had an open top
Right.
and it had tracks on it,
Right.
and we just run it up on a parapet and to do our firing.
Right. So it was basically a tank chassis like the old World War II M7 Priest.
Just a tank chassis with no top.
Right. Right. And so you had a 105 artillery piece on that?
105.
Yeah. Yeah, those were left over from World War II, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stuff they discarded and threw away. Mm-hmm. That's what we were using.
Right. Now, what actual duty did you have? Since you're the chemical guy and there's no chemicals, what were you doing?
Well, in an artillery unit, you have so many guns. Each gun has their own crews. Each crew slept in their own bunkers. We had so many people in each bunker. If things were pretty quiet and we weren't fighting and shells weren't coming all in, we divided up into half. Half the bunker you had duty this day, half duty this day, and this night. So this half could sleep unless we were being attacked or we were going on whatever. If you didn't have guard duty. And this half was up and ready to go all the time. You just slip your shoes on and go. And so I did my duty there. I stood in my guard like everybody else, but they found out I didn't need sleep very much. So the guy in charge of communications, he'd call up and he'd say, my guys say they're too tired. Can you go out? I'd go, okay. I'd go out and check wires for telephones and radios and whatever. And transportation department, they'd call up and say, my guys say they can't run no more. Can you go? And so I'd drive a truck back to pick up ammo, and I'd drive a vehicle back to pick up an officer or whatever. And I was out on wire patrol half the time. 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd be walking the hills of Korea. And that wasn't my job, basically. Back when it was done, I came back in the outfit one day, and the captain's standing there, and he's talking to the colonel, and he said, you know, see that guy over there? He's done for every job in his outfit, except mine. He said, don't watch out, you doing that. Because I think I'm just saying this on my own. I think looking back on it, I think part of the time some of these guys wouldn't go on patrols, not because they were tired, just because they were scared.
Mm-hmm.
And they were used being tired as an excuse not to go. But that's what we were there for.
Right. Now, was checking the wires a dangerous job?
At times. I mean, I'll take one time, I had one of these little pen lights, these little AAA, one little AAA battery I carried in my pocket. So I better checking the lines and, So the enemy's back here, so I turn my back to the enemy. Okay. And I start fixing my light. There was one time I was out there, I had a little kid with me, a young kid. And I said, okay, there's the line, get your roll of wire out here. And by the time he put the wire out, and we was gonna patch it and fix it, I heard, And the kids, what was that? I was a bazooka shell.
Mm-hmm.
Stand still, don't move. Boom! I heard a boom down below it. I said, now run like the devil. Because I said, the third one's going to be right where we're at. And it was.
Mm-hmm.
The Chinese and the North Koreans, they weren't worth a hoot to a certain degree with a lot of artillery, but you gave them a bazooka and they could put it in your back pocket and give you 9 cents change.
Mm-hmm.
And they would go boom, bam, boom, they got you. And that's what they shot us with. Well,
A bazooka or a mortar?
well, either way they shot at you, that's what they
Yeah,
used.
well, a mortar will kind of come down on you from above, and a bazooka would be a straight shot.
Now, the ones with a fin on it, because you could hear them going through there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It just sounded like a big firecracker going through. And when I hear that, you know what it is.
Right.
But that's how accurate they were. They could put, now with some of the others, they were just shooting. And this kid, when he got back in, he said, the sergeant said, well, how'd things go? I said, oh, fine, no problem. And the lines are all fixed. And this kid was standing like this and shaking, and he started cussing the GI clothes. And Sergeant, what's wrong with the GI clothes? He said, they got buttons on, you can't get close enough to the ground. But he was one scared dude.
Mm-hmm. Right. Did you have, were there periods when your unit was actually under fire and they were trying to shoot at you?
Oh, yeah. One time we had a time when we were getting shot at so fast and so ferocious that coming in so you couldn't count them. And our orders were to go underground and just let them shoot. He said, as long as we don't see them coming across the hill or across the mountain, just bury yourself, let them shoot. He said, if we see them coming, we'll have to do something else. So, okay, so we ducked in.
Okay. Now, were there, you said you were supporting the 2nd ROK Division, so it's a Korean infantry division. Were they manning lines in front of you?
To our front and to our left.
Okay. And how much contact or communication did you have with them?
Just our forward observer, basically. I'll tell you one experience I had with that is, it was one night, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:30. It was one of them clear nights, and you could see up on the skyline, and, well, basically, there was supposed to be nobody behind us. Nobody. Once in a while, about 2 or 3 times a month, a great big tom-tom would come in there, and they'd, boom, fire off a few shots, and then they'd just take off. And the bad part about it is they always seem to come in the middle of the night, so you're trying to sleep there. Boom, that big tom-tom would go off and scare you half to death. But anyhow, this one night I went outside and had to take a leak. And it was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm standing there, and I look back up on the hill, and I can see heads moving around. Wait a minute, there ain't supposed to be nobody there. So I grabbed the phone, and I called the captain. Captain, are you awake? He said, yeah. I said, who moved in behind us? He said, nobody. I said, yes, they did. There's somebody behind us. There's heads moving on top of that hill like crazy up there. And so he says, he come out the door. I could see him come out the door down the road. Well, he got on the phone and started, well, come to find out the infantry went behind us. Now I stopped and realized we're only 200 and some men, and we were protecting the infantry.
Right.
That didn't make that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And, 120 men, I shouldn't say, not 200 and some. And so he got on and put them back where they belonged. And then, but otherwise on that, we had not too much trouble with them. The one night we did have fun with them was, well, I shouldn't say fun. I'm not sure what word you should use. But they called out fire mission, battery adjust, and we fired. 10, 15 minutes, ceasefire. They called down again, we fired, so went out there and started shooting. At just about the same area we'd been shooting in before, and we'd done that 4 or 5 times, every 40, 50 minutes. Well, what the heck's going on? And in that one night, we wound up doing it 9 times. We'd go out and we'd shoot at the same area, within 100 yards or so of each other. And we couldn't figure out what in the devil. Well, come to find out, this Korean infantry, they would fight like tigers and they would take that hill. Then the Chinese would get down there and rattle their pots and pans, blow their whistle, and the Koreans would run off the hill. And then they'd fight like mad to take it. They did it 9 times in one stupid night. And they had just want to be casualties retreating off the hills, they did fight to take it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I should get back to the story you were talking about getting fired at. We were getting fired at one time so fast that they told us to go underground. And we just stayed there. When it was all over with, the only damage had been done, some of our parapets got tore up somewhere, so we had to take shovels and go out and put some dirt up there so the tanks could go up and get their elevation and stuff. Other than that, there was not much damage done. But the damage was done in morality. Because when you go around picking up these shells, we went around on some of our outfit and we'd pick up pieces of shrapnel and stuff all around there. Because they were coming in so fast you couldn't count them. And so, but we'd pick up a piece of shrapnel and it would say manufactured Pittsburgh, Ohio. Manufactured Cleveland. Manufactured Des Moines, Iowa. Wait a minute. And we found out later that when Mr. Chiang Kai-shek got pushed off of China, he had let, now this is in 1940s and 50s money,
Right.
not 2009.
Right.
In 1950 money, $6 billion, a B, not an M, dollars worth of nothing but ammunition. And that's what the Chinese were fighting us with, was our own stuff.
Right. Yeah. And that
That was a little discouraging.
yeah. And I think the way they made the Soviet-made weapons usually had a slightly larger size, so they could put the American shells into their guns and use those. Whether they had the American guns left over or they were using Soviet-made ones.
Well, I'm not sure what guns they
still
were
use
using,
the
but they were using
ammunition.
our ammunition.
Right, right, yeah. And they had a lot of U.S. equipment there because
And because when he got pushed off to Taiwan, why, he left us all behind.
that's your
I
phone.
know, it's just... Hello.
Let's see. You were talking about what had happened after you had undergone the bombardment and so forth, and you okay. So I guess you were finding all the shells and so forth, and realizing you were being bombarded by the Chinese, who were using
It was all
American
our own
surplus.
stuff, and well, that kind of knocked your morale down a little bit when you realize that your only people back in the United States was making all this stuff, and you're getting shot with it and trying to be killed with it.
Right.
It was kind of disheartening in a way.
Okay. Now, did your unit take any casualties in the time that you were serving with it?
A few, not no big amount, because we were pretty well protected. Except for that one incident, the infantry stayed in front of us pretty good, and we had pretty good hills in front of us, mountains, and we had all kinds of weapons. But I mean, nowadays it wouldn't be considered, but then we had, well, superior weapons to what the Chinese and Koreans had, or North Koreans had, completely. We could sit there on the side hill and just put bullets in every inch or two along the hill over there, something we wanted to, and so we had pretty. Except now, I'm getting ahead of myself, but just after this guy that I was telling you earlier that caused me to get injured by his stupidity, and I got hit here, and the doctor said it was in maybe a 10,000th, if it had been over 10,000th of an inch, I'd have been blind in one eye. And it had nothing to do with the war. It was just him being stupid. And so they sent me back to MASH. And when they fixed it up, just was there one night, and the doctor said, well, just stay here, we'll send you back in the morning. Just look and make sure everything's fine. And so which they did, and I got in the morning, which they fixed it, and they in the morning, he said, well, we ain't got nobody to send you back up there with. And I says, well, am I okay? Yeah, and I'll find a way back. I said, I'll hitchhike back up. There's always got to be somebody running back up that road. And so I go down the road and I start hitchhiking back to the front. And I hadn't been out there only a little ways. And Deuce and a half come along and loaded with ammo, which is not the safest truck to be getting into for a ride, but I was wanting back, so I didn't really care. And I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to Baker Battery. I said, that's close enough. I'm going to Charlie Battery. And so he dumped me off there at Baker, and I walked the extra quarter of a mile or wherever it was up to the Charlie Battery. And I walked in up there, and my captain was standing there on the hillside, and he seen me walking up the hill, and he said, oh, and he grabbed his phone, and he said, you know that guy I told you to take off the rotation list? Put him back on. He just walked in. That's how close I came to missing it. And so the next few days, we rotated out of there and come home. Well, it was spring a week, I guess. Anyhow, I got back to Chungcheong. Well, by the time we got back to Chungcheong, we were back in South Korea. And we had a warrant officer with us that could still have connections back and forth to the front. And in the time we had got on that deuce and a half, and came back across the 38th parallel and come into South Korea, and it was in Chungcheong by the next morning or so, my outfit had been attacked, and out of 120 men, had 25 casualties and had retreated 10 miles. And I had just left. That's why I said I was kind of honored or something. Somebody was looking out for me a little bit.
Now,
Well, it was so bad that we were supposed to get on a train to go out to Pusan to come home that day, and they came around and said, we can't put you on a train for Pusan, there's snipers out there. And we said, snipers out there, my foot, you're going to send us back to the front and replace them casualties. They just got killed last night or yesterday. Well, they finally put us on training. We went clear down to Pusan, and we were supposed to get on a boat. We were supposed to get on the Black Hawk. They said, well, we can't put you on the Black Hawk because there's a typhoon at sea. Typhoon at sea. You're still sending us back to the front to go replace these guys. We're going to go up to Incheon or something. Well, finally they put us on a boat, and some of them poor guys still believed we weren't coming home till they looked up to the Golden Gate Bridge come over the horizon, and they finally realized, well, yeah, this wasn't Incheon, it was the United States. But some of them, all that way across there, were still at a bleak back in the back of their head that we weren't coming home.
now, how long did you spend actually up in the front lines with your unit? About how long was that?
About a year and a half, probably a year and 3 or 4 months.
Okay. Now, over the course of that time, did you get to spend much time away from the front lines? Did you go anywhere else, or did you get any?
I was
leave
gone
time?
to Japan for, well, I got kind of lucky on that too. I mean, you're supposed to get 5 days R&R to Japan, and they sent us back to Neosho, Japan, or sent me back to Neosho, Japan, which is just outside of Yokohama, and it was supposed to be 5 days. And everybody went back there for 5 days, or supposed to get 5 days. Well, I had been there maybe 2 days, 3 days. And what was then 5-star General Dwight D. Eisenhower lit somewhere in the Far East. We didn't know where. They wouldn't tell us. We didn't know whether it was Japan, Korea, Philippines, Indochina. We didn't know. He was somewhere down there. And once he touched soil in the Far East Command, we could not move. So instead of being there 5 days, I was there 7 or 8 days, or 8 or 9 days, because it was the middle of my stay when he lit. So anybody that had been there 1 day, or 4 days, or 5 days after when he lit, stayed till he left. Once he got off the soil, then we'd all follow. So these guys all come in here 1 day here, and 1 day here, and 1 day here, and 1 day. But almost 1 day they want everybody to get out of there.
Right.
Because you all wanted you back your outfit. Some of them have been there a week or two. They're only supposed to get 5 days. So I wound up going back to Korea out of Yokohama on a 2-engine plane, carrying lettuce and tomatoes and vegetables, sitting on a crate of lettuce, and we got out over the Yellow Sea and one engine was on fire. And I'm going back to my outfit, and I told the pilot, I said, I don't give a hoot, but I said, I'll jump out of this stupid thing, but get me away from this Yellow Sea. I don't want to land that stupid yellow stinky stuff, because it ain't just a name on the map. It is yellow. I mean yellow. It's the dirtiest looking stuff up here you can see. I said, you get me over land somewhere, I'll jump out of here. Well, he wound up making it back with us, so it was fine, but he fitted it in and got come in with one engine. We didn't come in very fast, but we came in. And I went back to my outfit.
Okay. Now, what was there to do when you were in Japan?
Eat, go to movies. Well, I had an experience in Japan. It was kind of different. I'm out there one night, about 11 o'clock, on the streets of Tokyo. Where was that? Yokohama? No, Tokyo. I was out in the middle of Tokyo there, and one night about 11:30, and this kid, he was probably 6, 7 years old, out there all by himself, and just crying his eyes out. And I said, boy, son, what's wrong? And he stuck his hand in his pocket and come up with nothing. And he done that twice. And aha, you ain't got no money. No. And he pointed, wait a minute. I reached my pocket and I pulled out some yen. I said, here, you take it. So he took a couple of them. The equivalent of maybe 3 pennies. I don't know, not very much. And I said, you take it. Okay, bye. And I started to walk away and he grabbed my arm. Now, you come. Oh, what the heck, I had all night, so I had another 2 or 3 yen and we got on the bus, or streetcar, whatever you want to call them things. And we rode out the street and he got off he was bound determined I was going to walk him home. Go home with him. Okay. I had to wait a while for the car to go back anyway, so I walked down there. Well, I got in that house, you would think I gave him $1,000 and it saved his life and all kinds of sorts of stuff, because man alive, I had a heck of a time getting away from there. I said, they're going to have me to bark down AWOL I guess, pretty soon. Because that found that mother and father, they were bound determined, because I had gave their kid streetcar fare home. But I had basically just, well, at least for one night, they adopted me pretty near. I mean,
Right. Now, how much contact did you have with the Koreans when you were there?
not much.
I mean, did you see much of their soldiers at all, or?
Just the outfit in front of us. Yes, the outfit in front of us. They had, because, like I said, we were in North Korea. We weren't supposed to be there. The U.S. government said we were in South Korea. I don't
Right.
know the 38th parallel, but we were, like I said, I seen the 38th parallel 4 times when I went in and out. 4
Right,
times.
because part of the front line was north of the 38th parallel.
When you get in Eastern Korea, we were north of the front line. Then they were back on the 38th, and then when you got on the western side, they were north of it again.
Right.
There was 2 bumps, and then we was up on one of the humps. And that's why after I left, that's why they had these guys had retreated 10 miles. Because the Chinese, I keep saying Chinese, we were supposed to be fighting North Koreans, but
Right.
there were more Chinese out there than
Right.
there was North Koreans. They knew the truce was coming. Like everybody else knew that they were trying to work it through. So they wanted us back on our 38th parallel when they signed that truce. They got them 10 miles closer to it, but they didn't make it. They were still probably 30 miles up in North Korea when the truce was signed.
Okay. Now, while you were there, what understanding did you have of why you were there, or what you were supposed to be doing?
Just saving the South Korean people, that was it. I mean, it was kind of hard to understand basically because the only difference between the South Koreans and the North Koreans was where they lived. I mean, this brother they could have been raised here in one family, and one brother could have got a job down here in this town, and one brother got a job over in this town, and he's a North Korean and he's a South Korean. But the difference is the guy down here gonna live pretty good, and the guy up here is gonna starve.
Right. And that hasn't changed very much.
No, it ain't changed. You go right now and fly over Korea, and for the 38th parallel south, it's lit up like Chicago. From the 38th parallel north, it's dark as the ace of spades.
Now, what were your living conditions like when you were up at the front line? You said there were bunkers and things. Would you sleep in bunkers
We
or
slept in
outside?
bunkers with big piles of sandbags in front of us, behind us, and on top of us, and a mountain behind us, I should say. 3 layers of sandbags, lengthwise layers of sandbags in front of us, and umpteen layers on top, and they just threw dirt up there too. And
And
of course, a direct hit would have wiped us out, but it would have taken a 100% direct hit to die.
right. And most of the time they weren't using heavy artillery, so that would probably
Not
help
most of
you.
the time.
Right. Now, did it get cold up there?
Oh, not over 40 below. It's one of the coldest spots in the wintertime, and the hot. Well, you go out and stand duty in North Korea for 2 hours, stand guard duty, or walk in the hills. And the wind will be blowing at about 30, 40 mile an hour. And the temperature gauge is going to say 20 below or something. Which means the wind chill is down here to 40, 50, 60 below. And there you stand. But in the summertime, it's one of the hottest spots around. Like I used to go out on wire patrol with these guys because the guys said they needed to. One Sunday, and this is what makes me think that a lot of them were doing it because they were scared. This was in the middle of the day. It was about 102 degrees. And I'm walking out here. I had a driver go with me. And we had a road there we called Ifrit Road. So he took me up to the top of Ifrit Road. Right, if it was there, you had a road, and if it wasn't, you didn't. And I said, now you drive down to the bottom down there and get yourself in that Jeep hid somewhere in the trees and wait on me. So I had my telephone on my shoulder, my M15, my 45, my 38, a half-mile roll of wire, and my rifle, and a telephone, and so forth, and I take off. And a mountain here, a mountain here, and a mountain here, and the river down there. And I'm down in there, no air astern, and it's about 100 and some degrees. And I get down there about so far. Wire stopped. So I started fixing the wire. I thought, wait a minute, there hasn't been no shells come in here. This is weird. Oh well. fixed them. 8, 9 wires lined to our bazooka, or to our rockets, lined in the infantry, lined the forward observer, so forth. And I got them all fixed. Charlie Battery Wire Patrol. Okay, so I walked on down the hill, or on down to the river, and down by the river there was a great big old tree, like a lot of them go on the river banks with the roots down in there deep. And down in there amongst all them roots, we had a little board, just a little piece of pine lumber with a stuff check, and we used it as a kind of a checkpoint. So we could tell which, where, so we lost communication, you could go that far and you knew, well, it was that way or that way. And I said, well, just for the fun of it, I'm going to check then just again. I just done it 6, 7 minutes ago. So I hooked back on there. Charlie Battery Wire Patrol, how do you read? And they didn't read, there was nobody there. And I just came for it, I just fixed it. What the name of it? So I tried every one of them. I could still call forward. I still talk to the forward observer. I still talk to everybody that way. But I couldn't talk to nobody back where I just came from. I couldn't figure that one out. So finally I walked over to the Jeep driver. I said, well, drive it back up to the top. Go hide behind a bank somewhere. I got to go back up through there. So I started back up to the valley there. And I got up, well, probably 40 yards, give or take a yard or two from where I just fixed it in the wire. I said, now I know there hadn't been no shells coming there now, because I'd been here. So I fixed it again, or started fixing it, and I started hearing jabbering to the brush. Uh-oh. So I took one wire up and my telephone off and laid it down, took my M15 and I started to see the brush. Here was a two South Korean PFCs and one sergeant standing there using my wire to fix their telephone line. So I grabbed the sergeant and I hung him up like that and I slapped him across the face a couple of times and I gave him a shove. If you touch that wire again, next time I'll just shoot you right on the spot. You could furnish your own cotton. You're too lazy to carry your own wire out here, and that's over the end. The next time he's private, of course. I just had one stripe about him. How come he can talk our sergeant around? I said, just because I can. And I said, if you touch my wire again, you're dead. I might get court-martialed, but you'll be dead. And we never had no more trouble with him, by the way. But anyhow, so now we hadn't fixed the wire. After I took my wire back, I didn't really need it. I took my wire back just for the fun of doing it. And I said, now you go get your own cotton picking wire. And I picked my wire and went on back. And that's just the way some of them were. They were just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of strange. I mean, they were good people, but sometimes they did weird, silly things. Mm-hmm. Well, and the funny thing about Asiatics, I mean, for example, the Chinese would take a whole mess of their own people, and North Koreans, and work them by hand, no machinery, by hand with shovels and picks, and dig a hole through a mountain, big enough for a tank, to come through there and put a hole out the other side, and his tank would come roaring up there, boom, 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 fire a few shots at us, and take off. And they did all that just for one time to use it. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe 3 or 4 of them guys died of overwork or whatever. They didn't care. And life didn't mean nothing to one of them guys. And the time we turned around and started shooting back in that place, there was an empty hole there. The tank of God, he just come in and shoot a few shots out there, bomb, 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 and take off and go. And we turned around and started shooting at it, well, there was nothing there to shoot at. And they do all that by hand just to use it at one time.
Mm-hmm. Well, they had manpower.
Well, they had it. Well, we had a couple different episodes over there. This didn't happen very often, but we had it once in our area, and they had it once over in the western ways. I'm not sure the exact location of the other one. But you're sitting here on a hill, and we have 105 howitzers, we have bazookas, we have M15s, we have pistols, we have machine guns, all kind of modern equipment we had in the 50s. And all once these guys come walking towards you, hundreds of them, back or a few thousand of them, and the front line has a little rifle, like a hunting rifle type thing, Russian made, I think. But behind that line, they've got pitchforks and billy clubs, and they're marching at you. And I said, we're supposed to sit there and come stab us to death? I don't think so. So we'd sit there on the hill and bury them with bulldozers. So we came to the conclusion that the Chinese got into the war just to knock their population down. That's just kind of a way of putting it anyhow, but anyhow, that's what we've kind of conclusion was. And the Chinese and the Koreans are saying was somewhat the same way. It was the weirdest thing. If we'd be having shells coming in, whether it was artillery shells or bazooka shells or whatever shells, these Asians would stand there and watch them and laugh at it. And you just reach in and grab them, pull them back in a bunker or something. Hey, you idiot, they can kill you. You don't stand out there and laugh at something coming in there like that. You duck yourself, but they were doing it. And that was guys on our side.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, just the way they looked at things, I guess.
All right. Now, why were they? So you had some of them positioned with you, or where would you see them then if you were seeing them laughing at the artillery coming in?
Well, they come through. Some of them for the outfit next to us to come through with, well, getting back to my story, getting back to the part we was using equipment that had been thrown away in World War II, and the Koreans were using brand new stuff, it just manufactured. Well, if the Koreans needed 60 pounds of grease, or 60 weight grease, 10 pounds of it, they could just call them boy sign it in, and wasn't a little. But if we needed it, it would take us 6 weeks to get it through the red tape. So we'd go to the Korean outfit. Hey, boy sign, we need it. Oh, okay. We'd take it, and then they'd call in and get it delivered to them. And that's how we bypassed all the American red tape.
All right. So you got some chance to sort of see the Koreans in action,
Oh, yeah.
at least as far as that went. Now, did you spend any time away from the lines? Did you get to go to Seoul or Busan or any place like that? You just kind of stayed with your unit. When you were a truck driver, where would you drive to?
Back to the 38th parallel and pick up a little load of ammo and stuff. Because them trucks coming up from down below, they couldn't come up into North Korea. So they'd come up to the border line, turn theirs around, back it up, and we'd back in there and load it up and take off with it. So they could truthfully say they didn't go into North Korea.
All right, but you were, and
Well,
you had your own trucks. So,
They run my outfit, which was stationed there. I mean, that was our location. That's where we were at. We had bunkers and everything there. But we were probably 40, 50 miles up in North Korea. Now, I don't know exactly how many miles we're up in there because going around them hills and mountains, I'm not sure how far directly north we were going. But from the time we crossed the 38th parallel to Chuncheon, it was about 50 miles or so to my outfit. But whether that was going north or northwest or northeast, I'm not sure. Because we were winding around hills and stuff to get in there. But it was quite a drive back in there, I know that. Because that land in North Korea is nothing but hills and rivers and mountains and rocks.
did you see anything of the civilian population, or were they all away from the area where you were?
Most of them were gone from where we were. You did see some back in a few areas where you'd see a spot where the land was fairly yellow. Well, there'd be a guy out there trying to farm or something, and just taking his chances because that was his land, and he was risking his neck just to try to grow a little rice or whatever.
Right.
And there must be something to the rice because it used to make me so mad because I'd be carrying my half a mile of wire and my rifle and so forth, and I'm walking and got about all I can do to walk up this mountain with that thing, and here this Korean is on was 200 or 300 pounds of wire on his back, just trotting along, going up there. There must be something to this fish and rice business that I'm missing somebody.
Right. What kind of food did you get?
Well, C rations, K rations. No, we ain't gonna get no. We got a little of that once in a while, things are bad. But most of the time, we had cooks in our outfit that was risking their neck just to see to we had food. They'd be in there in their cook shack at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning cooking, and knowing that any second a shell could come through that roof and kill them all. But they'd be out there cooking, so we could anyway. We just a few hours at a time go through and get something to eat. So we were all in there at the same time and make one bomb could knock a whole bunch out. But just a few at a time would go through and get their meal. And the minute everybody got through, then the cooks would disappear too.
All right. Now, while you were there with your company, was there a specific subunit below company level that you were part of? Were you in a squad or a platoon, or were you just on your own and you just?
We was in a gun platoon.
Okay.
I was in with the one. Let's see, when I was gun number 4, and but each crew or each gun had a crew of so many guys. We had 8 guys to each crew.
Mm-hmm.
Each gun. So 4 we'd be on base one night and 4 the next and so on. Unless if we was under attack, then everybody's out there.
Right.
And even the guys in maintenance or wherever, they'd come running up across the outfit and start joining them, handing ammo or whatever was needed.
So were you mostly just moving ammunition, or did you load the gun, or what did you do?
Whichever.
Okay.
We kind of took turns. Whoever got by the gun, they was loading it.
Okay.
You'd pump it in, and one guy was setting all the stuff on there so he knew where he was going to shoot. The next guy's pumping in and yanking the lanyard on it.
And how would you know where to aim the gun? How did you get your?
Our forward observer.
So, and you had radio contact, or those phone lines, or?
Phone.
Okay.
One of the most scariest jobs I did one time was just before it was well, a while before the truce was signed, and probably, I'm not sure, 3 or 4 weeks. And we're out there, and wham, he's giving us SI and so forth, and elevation, and we're firing away. We had fired maybe half a dozen rounds, and all at once we realized where we was firing. And we said, "Hey, that's you." He said, "I know it. Your shells are coming in right beside me, right behind me, right in front of me." Well, this is kind of stupid. He said, "Yeah, but the Chinese are coming in right there too." So he said, "I just as soon I'd rather be killed by your shells than by them. So just keep, as long as I keep talking, you keep shooting."
Mm-hmm.
And we did.
And
I never did hear whether he come out alive or dead or was a prisoner or what happened to him.
All right. Are there other individual incidents or things that happened while you were in Korea that kind of come back to you or stand out in your mind that you haven't brought up here yet?
Well, little things like most of them Chinese were so doped up with morphine and stuff that if one of them got killed up the river 3 or 4 miles, by the time they floated down the river, they were swollen up like a big balloon and stunk to high heaven. I mean, they looked like a big human balloon when they'd come down the river floating. You'd see these dead bodies every once in a while. And it was kind of an awful sight to be watching, but that's just part of the game, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that,
What would the morphine have to do with that? Did the morphine just?
they'd have them doped up. Most Chinese were so doped up when they was in that war, they didn't know what they were doing. That's why these guys was coming at us with pitchforks. They didn't know what they were. They come at you with pitchforks and billy clubs, and you're sitting there with a machine gun. Well, hey, that's kind of an uneven battle, but then what you going to do?
All right.
You don't really have too much choice.
Now, during the time you were there, did men rotate out of the unit? Did they kind of keep track of how long they were supposed to be there? And
They supposedly did, yes. I say supposedly because they weren't too accurate with that.
Mm-hmm.
In my own particular case, it came out pretty close, but in some of them, they were missed by a ways. Not too far, though. I mean, not generally. Because they pretty well had, we had a pretty good system of rotating people back in to replace guys who were getting close. But then our outfit was fixed up with places to stay and sleep and eat, so forth. It was only about so many men. So we couldn't have too many there that were supposed to be rotated out at the same time people were coming in.
Right.
And so normally we'd be running a little bit short per day or 2 or 3 on purpose because we didn't have the facility to take on extra ones, and so you had to make sure these guys got out of here before the next batch come in.
Right. Now, what was done when new men came in to orient them or tell them what to do? Did anybody help?
That depends on the person. If they were assigned to a gun crew, you just took them out on a day when it wasn't too much happening, and one guy would go up and say, "Oh, here's what this guy's job is, and here's what this one is, and here's what this one is, and now you've got to learn to do them."
Mm-hmm.
And that was about it. But then most of them would take and we made sure that tried to make sure at least, that the first few days they were there, they would stay in the outfit that would just go out and watch.
Mm-hmm.
and we'd have the guys out there doing their job, and they could just stand in the bunker doorway and watch what we did. And then after 2 or 3 days, I mean, if there was an attack, well then they were probably they were in there. But I mean, if things was pretty quiet and we were just shooting some particular one target way out there, well then we let them stand there in the door and watch us for a couple of days, and okay, and then they'd take their turn right along with everybody else.
All right. You get to the end of the tour in Korea, and you finally, they get you out, they get you back to the States. Did you get discharged right after you got home, or what happened?
When I went over to Korea, it took me 13 days to get from Seattle to Yokohama.
Mm-hmm.
When I come back, it took me 14 days to get from back to San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
I went over on the second largest transport ship, and I came back on the third largest transport ship that the United States had at that time. And we lived in San Francisco. I got on a train out of San Francisco and went back to Lincoln, Nebraska, where I had an uncle living. I was going to stop and see him a day or two, and then go on home. No, I didn't get on a train. Yes, I did. And I stopped eating him a couple of days, and I went on home and spent a few days furlough, and then went back to Camp Carson in Colorado to get my discharge. And in the meantime, I went to see a lawyer to get my divorce. So I got my discharge from the Army. 20 days later, I got my divorce.
All right. And then, how long then did you just then live in Iowa again after that?
I was living in Iowa, and then soon after that, I went to work for Economy Farms Corporation in Des Moines. I moved to Des Moines,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked for them 10 years. and during that 10 years, we got married, and at the end of that 10 years, when 10 years, I quit my job. We'd lost a daughter, and she was getting pretty well down. So I said, well,
Mm-hmm.
I got to do something. So we moved to Michigan. I quit my job, took my time, and come up here, no job, no house, no nothing. We walked into Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Why did you pick Grand Rapids?
Well, that's where all her relations were from.
Okay. And then did you find a job then?
My first job in Grand Rapids was for Gordon Food Service. At that time, they didn't pay very good. I was working 70 hours a week just to feed my kids, but then they pay pretty decent now, but then they didn't. And I worked for them for a year, and then I got my call from the post office, and I went to the post office and worked there until I retired.
All right. To look back on the whole experience that you had in the Army and in Korea, what sort of effect do you think that had on you?
Well, I think it gives you a different perspective on life. You have you've seen the other side of the ball game, and it's, basically you've seen how the other half lives. And for a year or so you were there, and it's kind of hard to get used to, or it's kind of hard to explain what the deal is, but it's kind of, well, I don't really know how to put it. It's different than anything in the United States citizens be used to doing. And the way they live over there normal, even without a war, is so much different than what we're doing that it's kind of, and somehow it's good. Somehow it's good because the Koreans and the Japanese are more family oriented for the most part than we are. I mean, they'll stick up for their family a lot more than what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Or seems like they do anyhow. And now right now, for example, the Korean government, if I pay my airfare, or me and my wife's airfare, or whoever, from here to Korea and back, everything else once I land there is free.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was in the Korean War.
Right.
They'll pay for my hotel room, they'll pay for my eats, they'll pay for my tours. I mean, if I do a shop with that, I pay for, but
Yeah.
but as far as eating, sleeping, and the tours they take us on, the government pays for it.
So you get a certain sense that you did accomplish something.
Well, even the Koreans here in the United States, I mean, since we come back, there's Soul Gardens out there.
Mm-hmm.
They've had us twice and fed us supper twice for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't let us pay for it. And just little things like I hear and there that, okay, they appreciate what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had more than one Korean come up to me afterwards, or in the last 2 or 3 years even, and say thank you. And In fact, when I was at Kellersville High School, I had 2 or 3 kids that weren't Marines. I mean, well, I was kind of surprised that these younger kids would do that. But that we go in these schools and we're telling them stuff they don't get out of the school book. And basically how the people living, or how we living, or how they're, which that the Korean War in their history book has just a little column in there that just says diddly squat, and except that for what's his name, he gets rendered once in a while. We had to cut him off out here. Other than that, why? I mean, as far as hearing from some of you guys talk about their Bronze Stars or Purple Hearts, most of them they make the story in such a way that it don't bother even the younger kids. And because they'll just say, well, they got wounded and they got it, and it's so kids understand that part. I mean, they probably most of them, the older ones at least, know he didn't. It was worse than that, but he's just not saying it.
So I guess the original question I'd had was what kind of effect you thought all of this had on you, and basically what you're saying is you get a very different perspective on life and maybe what's important.
Well, it kind of makes you turn around and take a look at things on how you can finish out the rest of your life, or how you should finish out the rest of your life. And looking at it from either way you want to look at it, from strictly the human standpoint, or from the religious standpoint. And either way, you have to kind of change what you're thinking on some of that, because you've seen the other side of the world. And they do things completely different over there. I mean, for example, you walk into Japan, and probably 60% of the houses got Buddha statues standing inside the door. Probably more than that. You walk in a Korean house, and a high percentage of them got Shinto hanging in their walls. And so you stop and realize, well, hey, now there's people with completely different beliefs all around the world. It's completely different what you're coming up with, or raised with. Is a completely, and their loyalty to whatever they're to is genuine. They stick with it. Whatever, if they like you, they're with you 100%, not just till the weather turns bad or something.
All right. Well, you've covered a lot of material here, got a lot of different topics and stuff that's going to be useful to us. So I'd just like to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today. All right. And that will be a wrap.